Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Tuesday that Monday's talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul weren't expected to produce a breakthrough, but noted that some agreements were reached, and the work will continue. According to Associated Press speaking to reporters, he noted that the memorandum that Russia handed to Ukraine on Monday is aimed at removing the root causes of the conflict and set on a trajectory of a stable settlement. Asked about the possibility of a trilateral meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin, US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Peskov responded that, frankly speaking, it's unlikely in the nearest future. He emphasized that Putin has declared his openness for high-level contacts while underlining that such contacts must come as a result of agreements that have been worked out on a technical level, on an expert level. At talks in Istanbul on Monday, delegations from Russia and Ukraine countries agreed to swap dead and wounded troops. But their terms for ending the conflict remained far apart. Resident in Moscow showed mixed reactions to the talks. Although the negotiations were seen as a positive development, people do not believe that the conflict will end soon. What Ukraine did the other day, you probably understand what I'm talking about. I think it hardly brings closer. On the contrary, it is counting on the fact that someone will, so to speak, go crazy and get up to something, one Moscow resident said. Though Russia has a bigger army and more economic resources than Ukraine, a spectacular Ukrainian drone attack over the weekend damaged or destroyed more than 40 warplanes at air bases deep inside Russia, Ukrainian officials said, touting it as a serious blow to the Kremlin's strategic arsenal and its military prestige. The Russian Defense Ministry acknowledged that the Ukrainian attack set several planes ablaze at 2 air bases but said that the military repelled attempted attacks on 3 other air bases. Both Zelensky and Putin have been eager to show US President Donald Trump that they share his ambition to end the fighting, thereby aiming to avoid possible punitive measures from Washington. Ukraine has accepted a US proposed ceasefire, but the Kremlin effectively rejected it. Putin has made it clear that any peace settlement has to be on his terms.
Почти 400 репортеров со всего мира следили за вторым раундом переговоров делегаций России и Украины в Стамбуле. Итоги вчерашней встречи продолжают обсуждать журналисты и аналитики по обе стороны океана. А договоренность Москвы и Киева по обмену пленными уже поприветствовали в ООН.
Все нацелено на то, чтобы избавиться от первопричин этого конфликта и выйти на траекторию устойчивого регулирования. Конечно, ожидать каких-то сиюминутных решений и прорывов здесь было бы неверно. Работа идет, были достигнуты определенные договоренности в Стамбуле, они важны. Действительно, в первую очередь, все-таки люди. Эти договоренности будут реализовываться, ну а дальше работа будет продолжаться. Ожидаем реакции на тот меморандум, который был передан. Откровенно говоря, в ближайшее время вряд ли, потому что президент Путин неоднократно подчеркивал и свою готовность к контактам на высшем уровне, подчеркивая при этом, что эти контакты должны стать результатом тех договоренностей, которые уже будут выработаны на техническом уровне, на экспертном уровне.
Завершение не скоро. Я не верю, что оно скоро наступит. Очень там странные люди, очень агрессивные. И, на мой взгляд, не очень умные. Потому что умные люди, они прежде всего будут думать о людях, а не о том, чтобы карман свой набить. А у них, по-моему, это на первом месте.
Ну, то, что Украина вот сделала на днях, вы, наверное, понимаете, о чем мы говорим, да? Я думаю, это вряд ли приближает. Это наоборот, в расчете на то, что у кого-то, так сказать, поедет крыша, и кто-то начнет что-то отчебучивать, скажем так. Но пока смотрю, вроде народ держится. Но то, что переговоры однозначно приближают, это само собой.
Ukraine has pulled off one of its most daring operations, attacking key airfields of the Russian Aerospace Forces strategic aviation with drones. Z channels have erupted in hysteria, demanding nuclear strikes against Ukraine. The angry patriot, Maxim Kalashnikov, also spoke out. A complete failure of the FSB, he wrote. The well-known Z channel, military informant, did not hide its shock. Strategic missile carriers are attacked by FPV drones launched directly from the scene. How to comment on this, we have no idea. An officer of the Russian armed forces, Z patriot Ivan Otrakovsky, spoke out. He blamed the Kremlin for the failure. So that you understand. The airfields were not protected or covered in any way. Not by electronic warfare, not by air defense, including mobile, not by hangars in which the planes were supposed to be hidden. A cheap UAV destroyed strategic aviation planes, the cost of which is billions, and what's worse, they are no longer produced. It feels like we are being deliberately deprived of means of protection before a possible world war. Who is depriving us? The same ones I am constantly talking about, a group of spies sitting in the highest echelons of power, Otrakovsky wrote. The Russian channel, Protests in the World, expressed an interesting idea. It did not hide its admiration for what was happening. This is what one of the most daring pages of modern military history looks like, an attack by the Ukrainian armed forces on an airfield of strategic bombers. The Ukrainian defense forces are not just striking, they are changing the very nature of war. Today's operation against the Russian strategic aviation is already on a par with the epical attacks of the past, the British raid on Taranto in 1940 and the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Then, naval aviation showed for the first time that battleships are a thing of the past. Now this role is played by drones. Small, smart, precise. They easily penetrate thousands of kilometers deep into the enemy and do what used to be the task of entire fleets. Old military textbooks can safely be sent to the waste paper. Ukraine is writing new ones. And it is writing them live on air, the resource wrote. Z propagandist Pozdnyakov began to threaten that he would tell the Russian dictator Putin about what happened and hit him with Orshnik. Who will be held accountable for this? I have tears in my eyes, he wrote. The Russian military 13th went further and demanded a nuclear strike on Ukraine. This is damage to our nuclear shield, the shield of our country, the occupier was indignant. Z propagandist Romanov also did not keep silent. The bombers were built during the more developed civilization of the Soviet Union and are a non-renewable strategic resource. Modern stripes have only thought of covering the fuselages with tires. The stripes have not thought of stretching a net from a fishing line, as is done by operators in the SVO zone. There is no need to talk about placing electronic warfare at the bases of strategic bombers. The situation was described quite colorfully by the Russian Z resource, Northern Channel, which is associated with the Russian armed forces. The Ukrainian armed forces are simply destroying our strategic aviation. They have already covered the 4th airfield in a couple of hours. With FPV drones. Not even with missiles. We haven't had to endure such humiliation as today for a long time, he noted.